So today, what we're talking about is energy, and specifically about understanding your energy, understanding your partner's energy, but more importantly, understanding why you and your partner got matched up. So, as the question goes, do you ever wonder that? Do you ever wonder, why did the universe match you up with your partner? And for some people, of course, that's it's a great question, and they feel really great about that, and they feel very lucky that they've been matched with their most amazing husband or most amazing wife. Other people will say, oh no, gosh, whether they're saying my husband's a narcissist, or or we're totally oil and water, we're not the same at all anymore. And it's interesting because with those types of relationships, when things are really struggling and I start to dive into, well, what did you see in this person to begin with? You can really start to uncover what brought two people together. And usually if the relationship is spiraled downward, what brought them together were some things that were not necessarily healthy things. So, that's where you get into what modern psychology will talk about trauma bonding, or sort of that anxious avoidant dance. The reality is, and my main message is that the universe never makes mistakes. Okay. So you and your partner are together for a reason. And that's a really, really important message, and a really important thing for people to understand, because when you can start to understand energy, when you can start to understand what brought you two together, what happens is you don't just understand yourself differently when you understand your own energy. It'll help you to understand your partner differently. And then when conflict arises, or when you're attracting different things into your life, you can actually, look at a situation and go, oh yeah, I did that. And sometimes it's like, oh, I did that. That was me. But when it's something that you don't necessarily want, that you've brought into your life yet again, and often these things are patterns, you can also say, oh yeah, I did that too. And that, as I always say, that's powerful information. It's good information. Oftentimes people are worried about understanding some of this stuff, or they get almost defensive. So, you might hear people talk, when you talk about this stuff, that, oh, that now you're victim blaming, or that sort of thing. And there is never ever a time when understanding your energy is about blaming yourself for anything. And it's certainly never about taking accountability for somebody else's actions. One of my clients sent me a meme today, which was a great one. It said, what did it say? Something about that when something about a lack of boundaries, basically, that you having a lot, or a compassion, that's what it was, is that compassion shouldn't be confused with a lack of boundaries. So just because you can be compassionate towards someone doesn't mean that you can allow them to treat you terribly. And she said that to me, and of course it's great. And she sent it to me because it was very much what we had been discussing a few days ago about her own relationship, and how she's allowing people to treat her poorly. So I would never, and teach or let anybody else believe that somebody treating her terribly, or somebody treating me terribly, was my fault. That's not what understanding your energy is about. The only piece of it that is something that I could do anything about is how I react to it, and how I change my expectations in the future. So you can either continue down the same path that you've been on, and if that path and that relationship is spiraling downward, it's not going to get better unless something changes. If it's spiraling upward, you also want to understand what's going on, so that you can continue with more of that same positive energy. But it's important to remember that just because you didn't intend for something to happen, or you don't want something to happen, that doesn't mean that it's not going to happen if the person that you are And what you believe about yourself and what you're putting out there is attracting that to you. So that's what I want to talk about today, is just understanding how we create and become a magnet for certain things in our lives, and how, you know, how to understand what you're a magnet for, okay? And this applies, of course, to your relationship stuff. It also applies to every other area of your life. So it applies to your career, it applies to your finances, it applies to your relationship with your children, the way that things are going with your family life, all of that. So when we talk about the fact that we create our own reality, it's really important to see that as a positive, because there's a lot of power in understanding that, and in learning then how to shift your energy so that you can create more of what you do want and less of what you don't want. Okay, so first off, so when we're talking about understanding your energy, one of the things, like I said, that happens is you're able to when you understand your stuff, you're able to understand your partner differently. And that's a really important piece, because when you understand and have more compassion for yourself, naturally you're going to have more compassion for your partner. And a lot of people will say, well, I don't need to have more compassion for him because he's, you know, isn't very kind, or hasn't been very great lately, or whatever. And I agree. If somebody's not being very kind to you, you don't want to tolerate more of that. However, it's also important, because sometimes as you start to change the level of compassion you have for yourself, you'll see a shift in the way that people are treating you. And I shouldn't even say sometimes, it's all the time. Whenever your energy shifts, the way that people treat you will shift as well. And, you know, at sort of a higher, above the energies plane level, people will talk about, I think it's Maya Angelou's, the famous quote for "you teach people how to treat you." And of course I agree with that, but it's missing the piece, because you don't teach people based on what you do. You teach people based on your energy. People are always hearing your energy much more than they hear your words. Your words flow, and your actions and behaviors flow naturally from where your energy is at. So if you want to understand somebody, if you want us to understand someone's energy, all you need to do is look at the results. So when someone comes to me and says, none of this makes any sense to me, Shari, because, you know, I've been a fantastic wife. I thought if I was a good person and I was loyal to my husband, and I, you know, raised my children well, and I did all the right things, then why didn't everything work out for me? And I think that's a fantastic question. It was one that I asked myself many years ago. But it's really important to take a look at that, because the results that you get in your life are an indicator of your energy, much more so than just setting a high level intention. And we'll talk a little bit about affirmations and vision boards and all of those fun tools and stuff in a little bit. But just know that if you ever want to say, well, do I have good energy around money? Well, what does your bank account look like? That's the indicator. So do you have good energy around your career? Is your career everything that you want? And do you have good energy around relationships? How have your relationships been going throughout your life? So that's really the best indicator of where your energy's at and where you need to start looking to do the work. So I wanted to talk about how people, or how and why people match. Because it's, again, something that it's really hard for people to understand. So I'm going to use a few examples from some of my clients. Of course, all of it is with their permission, and names are changed and all of that kind of stuff. But it's some really interesting examples that I've had in, the past year or so, of people whose energy, who thought they didn't match, and who very, clearly did match. And in fact, I was just talking to somebody a little while ago. So she's a doctor in Toronto. She's got, she's been married for 15 years. They have 2 kids. And she was telling me how, obviously she's a doctor, so she's been to school for a long time. She's a very high achieving woman. And so as we're diving into some of her energetic patterns and looking at some of the stuff in her childhood, one of the things that stood out, which doesn't seem major for a lot of women, but it is major, is she was talking about, the various awards that she'd got. And of course, I'd asked her a bunch of questions about it. So as a child, she started getting awards like, school awards in school, that sort of thing, when she was very young. And she remembered, and I actually have an example from my own life about this in my book too, but she remembered getting a lot of praise and attention from her parents for these awards. And I believe she told me that she also got paid for every A that she got on her report card. And I actually remember in school, some of the parents doing that, not mine, but other people's parents, they would give them money for every A they got and stuff. And those parents, I always say, it's never about blaming the parents either. Those parents were doing their best. They thought, well, this makes sense. If you work hard and get A's, you'll get money. Because in their mind, if you work hard in life and in your career, you'll get money. So it felt to those parents like a very rational and logical way to teach their children to work hard in school and to kind of incentivize them or motivate them to do well. So she was talking a little bit about all of that. And yeah, so she got tremendous amount of reward for and recognition for her accomplishments. Of course, this served her very well. And from a career standpoint, she went on to become a doctor, is very successful, all of that. Her relationship, however, is much less successful. So they started struggling in their relationship, just a few months really into the marriage. And it's been a progressive downward spiral ever since. Now she's found herself in a position where she's worried about divorce, of course, for many reasons. One of them being that she'll be paying a ton of spousal support, child support, all of that out if she does get a divorce. So she's very concerned about that aspect of things. Her children are a little bit older, but obviously concerned about the impact on her kids. So it's a big deal, obviously. This relationship stuff affects your whole life. So we're diving into that. And one of the big things that they struggle with in their marriage is he is very quick to jump to a temper. So she finds that it's kind of like, no matter what I do, he's mad at me, is what she was saying. So it's something like he starts talking about something that he's going to purchase, or, something that he wants them to do next summer. Like, oh, maybe we should take the kids to Europe next year, I think was one of the ideas. And as soon as she asks questions, he gets very angry. And basically, he has told her that he feels like she basically squelches all of his dreams, that she won't let him do anything on his own, that she thinks she has to control everything. And so that's his perception of how things look. He's told her that he doesn't feel like she respects him, that, she doesn't respect the way that he parents. They have all of these issues, which, to be honest, a lot of what I'm saying could be 50 or 75% of the women that I work with have very similar issues with their husbands. Excuse me, in terms of, arguing that he doesn't feel respected, he jumps to anger very quickly, all of that kind of stuff. So anyway, so as we're diving into all of this, and so this is where her marriage is at now. And, that's a very small piece of the pie from her past that she's shared with me. So let's look at that from an energy standpoint. So her energy then, right from the time she was very small, and probably even before school, but what she can remember, she was, as I said, very much rewarded for her accomplishments and that sort of thing. So she was rewarded for being smart, and she was the top of the class. I believe she was valedictorian of her class, all of that stuff. So her self-worth really comes from knowing stuff and being the smartest person in the room. So her belief system, that's a deep rooted belief for her, and not one that's necessarily conscious. And when stuff isn't conscious, that's where the energy comes from, right? Like, so her energy says, in order for me to be liked and loved, I need to accomplish stuff. I need to be smart. I need to be able to fix things and tell people the right way to do stuff, all of that. And so back to this whole thing with her and her husband, where he says, well, you know, destroy my dreams. You're always asking me questions and whatever. And she said, well, Sherry, I'm not saying he's doing anything wrong. I'm just asking questions. I can't even ask him a question. But when we dove into it, the truth is she wasn't really asking a question. She doesn't, when she's doing this, she's not asking a question. She is challenging him. She's saying to him, explain yourself. Right? And the reason she's saying explain yourself is because she's checking up to make sure that, have you thought this through? Because her assumption is, consciously or subconsciously, her assumption is he has not thought this through. And so she in fact is challenging him on things, even though she feels like, well, I'm just asking him questions and I have every right to do that. And so, you know, I always have to remind people, it's never about your right to do something. It's about what your energy says. So her husband isn't hearing the question. Her husband is hearing the challenge, that she truly is challenging him on something to prove him wrong, or to prove, you know, or to find out more information so that she can add a point in, or that sort of thing. And even though it's coming from a very kind place, until thinking about it, she didn't even realize that that truly was the energy that she was carrying. And so that's just a very small thing, but also a very huge thing in her relationship. Because if just that piece can be shifted and solved, if she can learn how to ask questions and find out information from a place that's really filled with more positive energy, where if she can get to a point where she actually does have more respect for her husband and does assume the best about him, those questions will change and the energy behind them will change, and he will hear that instead. And now, using that same example, and again, like I said, I see this all the time. I've got many examples about the question answer thing. But using that same example, now let's look at the husband's view of things. So with her husband, so his big issue right now is he doesn't feel respected. And so let's look at how he shows up in the relationship. So as she was telling me, he's super grumpy. He, kind of barks at her all the time, that kind of thing, is really grumpy with the kids, really hard on the kids, all of that, and kind of has created this environment in their home that's really, really, really unpleasant. So when you start diving into things on his side, his biggest issue is not being respected. But as is the case with anybody who feels like they're not respected, if you feel not respected, you will automatically create more of that in your life, which is exactly what he's doing. So every time he's yelling at the kids for not doing the dishes properly, or for not getting home on time, that, you know, at the time that he thought they should be home, and creating all these situations, what he's doing is he's creating relationships with his children where his children are learning to be very good liars, because they're not going to tell him the truth if they know they're going to get in trouble. This is across the board. If you show me a controlling parent, I'll show you kids who are good liars. So this is exactly what he is creating. So he feels disrespected. So he's doing everything he can, searching for respect. But the more you search for respect, the further it runs away from you, right? And so what he's done is he's brought into his life over and over and over, more and more people and situations that make him feel like he's not respected. And same thing where he's sitting there going, what have I done wrong? I work hard. I'm trying to be a good father. I just want my kids to respect me. My wife doesn't respect me, all of this stuff. But he's creating all of it. Obviously unintentionally, because nobody ever is desiring to not be respected. So that's just one small example of how two people are brought together for a reason. So her energy says, you know, I need to also be respected, right? So her energy matches his. It's always a match. I have yet to meet a couple or to have women go through my program where after talking to them for even just an hour, I can always see exactly where those matches are in the relationship. The law of attraction never makes mistakes. If you are with somebody, if there is any situation that occurs, there has been a match there, an energetic match. You are a magnet for what you attract into your life. I'm going to use another example. I'm working on a new program on prosperity. So for women creating prosperity in their lives. And one of the things that I'm working on as part of that is the concept of tithing, which is a, you know, fascinating concept and something that, you know, before I really understood it, I kind of looked at tithing as, well, it's always something that's related to, you know, some sort of a strict church organization or something. And I thought it was kind of a way for churches to get money from people so that they can pay their pastors and whatever. And not that that's a bad thing, but that's really what I thought tithing was about. So tithing, the word tithing is based on the concept of 10%. So tithing is about giving away 10% of everything that you earn. So the whole energetic basis of tithing, when you actually start to understand it, is that because there is sort of one of the divine laws of prosperity, right? The whole basis of it is that the more you give out, the more you will receive. So what you give out is what you attract to you. And it's really interesting when you start to understand or look at the actual stats around people who tithe, because people who tithe always make more money. And it's it's always energy, right? It's not luck, it's energy. So when you're putting out, and the reason behind that is because if you're tithing, it's because your energy believes it will be fine. If I if I'm tithing and I really step into that, very likely that I'm doing that because I completely believe that I'm always going to have more money coming into me. And it's the same thing when you look at respect or any other issue that you might experience in your relationship. Anything that you're searching for. So if you're feeling like, "Oh my gosh, I have no money, I have no money, I have no money," you will create more and more situations where you have no money. Versus if you're if your belief system is very much around, and it's not just belief, what's below your belief system is your energy. But your belief system is the part of it that you can think about. If your belief system is that you only see abundance and prosperity surrounding you, you will see more and more and more of that, and it will flow to you. So this is the crux of anything when it comes to your energy stuff, is that everything you want is, and whether or not you have it or whether or not it's coming to you, is going to be based on your sense of self-worth, your sense of security and safety in the universe, in the world. Because when you just know something, when it just feels natural and like it's a part of you, then that's exactly what you create, right? And so this is, this is exactly why, again, it's so important to understand your energy, because if you want to break any generational patterns, if you can identify your own generational patterns, especially the ones that are no longer serving you or your family, what you're identifying is the energetic patterns that have never been shifted. So as you're looking at your own relationship patterns, in every single case, they're always unique to just you. So, one woman I talked to, I'm just thinking out loud, for example, she was telling me about in high school, so we were doing this energy assessment piece, and she's talking about how in high school, girls were mean to her and this and that and whatever, and she kind of made a comment like, I mean, how high school girls are. And again, so interesting that to her, that's just normal. Like, of course, high school girls are mean. That was not my experience. I had beautiful friendships in high school. I mean, it's not that there was never any drama, but I certainly would never just automatically say, oh, yeah, high school girls are just mean. Because that's not my belief system. That wasn't my energy. I'm sure that there was a lot of meanness happening. I wouldn't have noticed it because I was off minding my business and, spending time with my friends and having my own problems for all of my energetic reasons. But they weren't mean girl kind of problems. And any of those sorts of things, anytime you hear yourself say stuff kind of like, well, that's, how it is. Question that, because how it is for you is not the same way that it is for other people, or not all other people. At any time that I have another client who has often said to me, you know how men are. And again, so funny because your view of how men are is different than other people's, because those parts of us that are just so much a part of us, so much a part of our belief system, those are the things we need to question. And until you start doing this energy work and really diving into, well, what things aren't going well and why, and then start looking at the energy behind what's driving what's going well and why, or what's not going well and why, until you do that, you're not really doing the work to shift things. So you can, as I always say, I can give you the tools. I wrote a book. You can read the book and you can know all the tools and all the things. You can read every relationship book on the planet. The results you get from implementing tools is not sustainable. It's just about, those things are teaching you how to act. Until you learn how to change what's below your actions, the results you get will never be significantly different. This is why I always use the example, if some people who rack up their credit card and then they pay it off and they think, oh, I'm not going to do that again. And then within just a few months, it's all racked up again, right? This is why their money energy didn't change. This is why the divorce rate gets worse and worse and worse with subsequent marriages. So first marriage is 50%, second marriage is 67%, third marriages, I think, is about 78%. Why? Because the energy you take from one relationship to another doesn't change unless you do the work to change it. If you've been struggling in your relationship, if you feel like you've lost yourself and you'd like to figure things out and really step into the happiness and prosperity that the universe wants for you, click the link below, join our community over in the Facebook group, Relationship Answers for Women. There's also a link to download my best-selling book, When Marriage Needs a Miracle, absolutely free. I hope you enjoy it. Thanks for being here.